Propaganda. How are you?
Hey, I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for chatting with me today about this thorny topic that is purpose. Are you
Yup.
where do we find you on this bright March day?
I am in Nashville, starting rehearsals for my next tour with my buddy Andy Mineo. So we leave on Friday, and yeah, Friday we leave Friday, head straight to New York, and start getting busy.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay, well, let me read your, official bio just for folks who don't already know and love you.
go for it.
So, from the same soil that grew Jim Morrison, Tony Hawk, NWA Snoop, and Kendrick Lamar grows another LA native, Propaganda. What do you say about Propaganda? He's a poet, political activist, husband, father, academic, and MC. With LA flowing through his veins and armed with a bold message, Propaganda has assembled a body of work that challenges his listeners with every verse and reaches across the spectrum of pop culture. From aggressive battle raps to smooth introspective rhythms, Propaganda's music will cause you to nod your head, but more importantly, it will stretch your mind and heart. And yeah, that's the truth. Whoever wrote that knew the thing, right?
Yeah, it's the most uncomfortable thing ever to like watch somebody read your bio.
Yeah, no, I'm like watching you squirm there in your hotel
Yeah, I'm like,
room. Okay, so tell me what I didn't say in that short paragraph that you think kind of relates to this idea of who you are in 2016 and if you are where you thought you would be.
Yeah. Well, obviously the husband and father part is not in there. You know, the incredibly insecure trying to be what I think that thing says, is not mentioned in it. Um so yeah, I mean, people are just humans are complex, you know what I'm saying? And there's so many different spheres of existence that we're kind of all in, and trying to put that into like 30 words or just a paragraph is like, you know, is almost it's just insulting to any
Hmm.
person, you know what I'm saying, to try to
Hmm.
boil them down to like a paragraph. But yeah, so I think that there's so many other facets, you know what I'm saying? There's like, the guy that like, yeah, you can sold 700 tickets, 1,000, 1,500 tickets to a concert just to come home and still see that my daughter still can't flush the toilet, or like
Hmm.
her, you know, the clothes she wore yesterday are still on the bathroom floor and she's got three towels. And I'm like, you're 10 years old, you're 4'2", you need one towel. You know what I'm saying? And like, why can't you pick your clothes up? Like, this is you've been here 10 years. You've been here 10 years. You know what I'm saying? So there's still like there's that part, there's just desperately trying to hide my insecurities, you know what I'm saying? There's that side. Um but am I where, I would hope to be? Um I think I'm in a place where I would have never imagined that I had no categories for where I am now.
Hmm.
Like that's something that you never really I just never really it's just not real. Like, I don't know how do you say this. Like when you start doing things that I guess you desire to do, um, you never really think it's real. You're just like, I'm shooting at this, and maybe one day it'll work. And then when it does work, you're like, I wait, I don't know if I reached the goal because I didn't know it was even possible in the first place. So I think that like in that sense, I'm happy in the sense that I still feel like I'm kind of on an adventure,
Mm-hmm.
that and you kind of never really know fully what's around the corner, you know what I'm saying? But my one of my mentors when I was younger is like you always be content but never satisfied. So like I think in that sense like I'm very content with where I am, but I'm not satisfied because I'm not done, you know what I mean? So I think that um there's a lot of joy that I have when I look at where I am now in 2016, to think that like, man, there's, you know, there I'm feeding my wife and children, you know what I'm saying, from art, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then And that's something that I know a number of people can't say. So there's like a certain amount of just absolute thankfulness and awe for like where I am. And then there's a part of me that's like, I know that there's more. I know that there's other things I can be doing. So so I think that there's this kind of dual, like, I couldn't have even imagined where I am, which is like wonderful. And then there's like, this could probably be better, you know?
Okay, so you said, you've done this thing, you're feeding your wife and kids with art. So is that your purpose? Is your purpose to do art and feed your wife and kids, or do you know what your purpose is?
Yeah, see, man, that's so interesting. I think purpose, just like people, is such a complex, like, kind of term. And I think in my life, like, it's something that um, is like constantly kind of taking shape, if you will, or being discovered as I'm changing and evolving and growing. I don't think it's like this sort of fixed
Hmm.
point in history, you know what I'm saying, or in
Mm-hmm.
time and space. But I do think that it's something that's like uh, revealed, and it's something that I do believe is transcendent. You know what I'm saying? That is like, not so much. Uh, how do I say this? Like shaped in the temporal, but I do think it's shaped in areas that are like intangible. Like, so I think it's shaped by sort of something that's transcendent. But I think that the vehicle for which those things are played out can vary. So when I look back at like, I was a high school teacher for about 6 years. When I look back at that, I went to school for visual arts, and intercultural studies. And when I think about that, and then my like soiree, like almost like a 5 minute soiree into like youth pastor ministry, which
Mm-hmm.
was just a disaster for me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Which, I mean, I enjoy the students, but like I'm not called to that, you know. Uh, but when I look back at that and kind of think about like even the tone of like where my music and my poetry and even like speaking and articles and stuff like that, like they've always, when I look back, it's always been kind of like sort of the same goal, which ultimately was like shaping culture. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Along the lines of sort of justice and understanding and kind of your place in the world. And I'm realizing now, like ultimately, whether it was like a classroom teacher or poetry or hip hop, I think ultimately that's what I was trying to say.
Hmm.
So I find now that like the vehicle has changed, but I realize now, like, you know, in the stage of life I'm in now, like ultimately I think that was my purpose. You know what I'm saying? Was like really just to speak in and to shaping culture, and I think I've learned to sort of now hold the vehicle a little looser. So I'm not gonna say that like, you know, my purpose was teaching,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Or my purpose was hip hop, or my purpose was poetry. Those are just the vehicles. But I
Yep.
found that like there's something greater that like ultimately is what I'm trying to say. So I think in that sense, yeah, like I feel like I'm kind of sitting right square in the middle of my purpose. You know what I'm saying? But I think that I have to continue to kind of like allow for the vehicle for which that's being carried out to be continually evolving and kind of changing as sort of I'm changing. You know what I'm saying?
I love that idea that they're vehicles for your purpose, because I think
Hmm.
it's so interesting, because I think some people sometimes say my purpose is to do this thing, and some
Hmm.
people say my purpose is to make this change or to have this
Yeah.
impact, and I do it through these different vehicles. So I'm
Yeah.
curious. Okay, so you have a lot of vehicles. You've
Yeah.
got your music and your writing and your
Hmm.
speaking, and you're just sort of connecting with people and being out in the
Hmm.
world. How do you manage all those vehicles? Like, do you, in your mind, think a few of these are priorities?
Yeah, I mean, there's the practical part of it, like what's paying the bills,
Sure.
there's that part, you know what I'm saying? But like, I think one thing that's important to me is like kind of in managing those, really like recognizing like what I'm not good at and kind of
Hmm.
allowing people around me to sort of help make sure that all of them are connected and kind of say, okay, how do I make this sort of feed that and then also feed this, that's all pointing towards the same thing. So if, you know, for a season, like I did I did sort of a poetry and photography book. So that meant during that time, I needed to kind of chill on like the sort of the rap concerts, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? And say,
Right.
okay, well, let me, for this season, set this on the side because like there's this literature that like I find is important, but ultimately the literature is supposed to set up, okay, so I gave you 6 months of like these sort of high thinking, sort of uh activist kind of poetry things. Okay, so then the next 6 months, okay, now let's do some hip hop. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
like really like allowing the team around me to kind of make sure that I'm not just kind of like shooting everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So like
Hmm.
the how I manage that is realizing really that like I just need to hire managers. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
That are kind of better at sort of seeing things from like a 50,000 foot perspective, and that really kind of frees me up to just kind of do what I'm good at.
So, how effective have you been at letting go of sort of responsibility
Oh
and being
man,
free to, yeah, pursue your best stuff?
man. I mean, in some senses that's yet to be seen. You know what I'm saying? But in other senses, I think it's kind of been slow in the sense of like really just accepting what I'm not good at. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's usually the biggest hurdle because it's prideful. You know what I'm saying? It kind of grates at your pride to kind of be like, especially if you're kind of sort of a sort of highly
Sure.
productive kind of, if that's kind of your personality. You know what I'm saying? Which is like, I mean, I know that's where I squarely fit, and I know you do too. Like we're
Hmm.
just like sort of those high productivity kind of personalities. You know what I'm saying? So it's like um, it's sort of a difficult pill to swallow when it's like you come to the realization that like, yo, I'm just not good at this. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was really the biggest hurdle. But I think that like once that hurdle was or that pill was kind of swallowed, it was incredibly easy to kind of be like, you know what, you're right. Here, you do this. You know what I'm saying? And then watching sort of the trajectory of like my efficiency and even my own just like ability to enjoy the day or kind of like enjoy what I'm doing, and then just kind of being like I actually enjoy not having to think about these things. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, really now it's like, oh, this is wonderful. Like there was one time I had to get to Knoxville, and I book a flight and I booked a flight to Nashville, and
Nice.
it was
That's
and it was
amazing.
for the next year. Like I put even the wrong year. So what's I was like, that's, I mean,
That's amazing.
if you, yeah, if you gotta, and if you know you book a flight, like that's a that's a $300 mistake. You know what I'm saying, right? So I'm like, you know what? Once it like hit my wallet, like I am, this your pride is costing you, fam. Like, you know what I'm saying? That extra $300 could go to that dude's salary and just let him do it. You know what I'm saying? So like,
That's an amazing example because I mean that's such
yeah,
a clear wow, I'm not working in my sweet spot at all. I'm doing stuff I really should not be doing because I don't even know what year I need to get to X place and I
come
don't
on
even
now.
know what place I'm going to. That's
Yes,
incredible.
yes, and it's just so stupid. It's like my wife has a phrase where she's like, if you just read stuff, it'd be easier. Like, and she just says it that calm, and it's really that's the case. I looked at the site and I was clicking, and I just saw I saw Tennessee and Ville, and I was like, if I'd have just read it, that no, that says Nashville, not
Sure,
Knoxville,
sure, sure.
and that year is wrong. Like, you just have to stop and read it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I am such a like, okay, I just want to get it done now so I
Yep.
can think about what I got to do there.
Yep. Yep.
That it's like, well, it's such a simple detail, and she's like, you're just not wired that way, and it's true.
So have there been other things that a few years ago you used to do that now you realize it's
Oh
crazy for
man,
you to do? Tons of
yeah,
things. I mean, I'm
uh,
sure there are tons of things. Give us another example of something
yeah.
else you
Besides
don't
like,
do on a daily basis.
yeah, besides like logistics and like, getting where I need to get to, which was really like probably the biggest thing was like getting where I needed to get to, and then I think secondly, sort of the creative process in the sense of, how do I say this? It would be really getting into like sort of the specifics of my career, and I'm trying to see if there's a way to say it that has to do more of a big picture thing. Basically, when you're putting together like sort of an album and an
Mm-hmm.
album launch,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really, a lot of ways a lot similar to like a book or like a
Mm-hmm.
TV series, or whatever case may be. You're thinking about like I'm planning the next 3 years of my life. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? And there needs to be a certain level of cohesion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm like picking songs or thinking of production and like writing, I just I like too many things. So and I'll want to say a million things, and it just makes for a very uh disjointed product. You know what I'm saying? Because I have so much I want to say, and I like so many different sounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I tried to produce my own records and then step into the artwork, right? Because again, I have like a background in illustration, so I want to do the design work, and then I want to come up with the idea for the videos and all these things and theme out the stuff. Like I just like so much stuff, and I'm inspired by so many different things. It's just the product is all over the place. You know what I'm saying? So I've had and I was doing that. Like I was designing my own shirts. I was, booking my own shows. I was doing all these things, and it was just everywhere. It just looked like a hodgepodge. So like having to say, okay, let me trust someone who's only focusing on
Mm-hmm.
design and visual arts. Let me
Mm-hmm.
trust someone who's only focusing on sound production,
Mm-hmm.
and give them my heart, tell them my desires, tell them what I'm looking for, let them shape a soundscape, and
Yep.
let them communicate with the visual artist to say, okay, the sound needs to match this look, and then once they match that look, let them talk to the apparel people and let them make that, so that, and then when we book rooms, so that the rooms are not just what I can get into, but like ones that create an environment that match the album, which match the
Mm-hmm.
visual look. You know what I'm saying? So just
Mm-hmm.
letting someone else do those things, so I can just like write hardcore raps and and just kind of make good music. I think that was like another thing that like I really learned to let go of. So I guess ultimately like letting someone else have the 50,000 foot, sort of
Mm.
perspective, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, was for me was like that was a game changer. A lot of artists like can do that. Like a lot of artists can be their own sort of label and management and executive producer. Like I'm just not that artist. You know what I'm saying? Like I need a team that is like that can think in those ways. You know what I'm saying? I have ideas, but like I'm gonna let them do what they do well. So I guess, yeah, I guess the two examples would be like my logistics and then my like sort of like overarching kind of 50,000 foot view.
So nowadays, now that you have a team that helps you do all this stuff, do you see a difference in the type of art you're producing? Or, I mean,
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah, because I'm able to think deeper
yeah.
and further about things. You know what I'm saying? Like when you do this in isolation, like you are your own like soundboard, right? So like you're gonna
Hmm.
go as far as you
Hmm.
think you can go. But when there's
Hmm.
that when there's that other team of people that would say, well, that would push back, like, well, why this? You know what I mean? Somebody I find that oftentimes I'll come to a topic or a poem, and I'll put the thing together and then realize that I'm actually making assumptions about like the listener's prior knowledge. Like, so I'm gonna assume that certain things, and if I have somebody sitting across the table to me going, I actually didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like you've made an assumption that when I'm coming into this, I'm gonna know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about in the first place. So help me
Yeah.
understand that first. You know what I'm saying? So that like made me kind of like dig a little deeper. I think I guess another good example of that, like sort of a parallel is, you know, oftentimes like when I'm talking to my wife or something, like I'll be telling her a story about like some friends or something with her family friends or whatever. And I'm like, hey, I talked to Paul, and Paul was telling me about, his niece and kind of what they're going through, and it was kind of, funny thing. And then they're gonna go see him next week, and then my wife's first question is like, oh yeah, hey, what's their niece's name? And I'm like, I never thought to ask. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? It was
Right.
just like her first question was like the most obvious, like, but I never thought of that. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
like having that other person to kind of go, hey, what's her name? You know, just and it's so right there. You know,
Hmm.
uh, having a team helps me like get to that like, oh, that was right in front of me. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You know?
So at what point, I mean, because I think one of the big challenges for many of us is this idea of like, you're trying to measure your income against sort of the team you want to build or don't want to build, and you're trying to keep the income so you keep the work and then you don't do better work as a result. So how did you think about
Yeah,
when to
man.
build up the people around you?
For me, it was when I absolutely needed it.
Okay.
Like I was willing to just like when it was building the original like sort of seed money, if you will. Like I mean, I'm from the inner city, like I'm from the hood. So like for me, like not having cash flow is not as terrifying. You know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying?
Uh-huh.
As you know, because if you've been overdraft before, if
Sure.
you've stood at the county line, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not. I've been broke. Like I'm not afraid of being
Hmm.
broke. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
like it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like I have that type of fortitude, like where I'm not afraid of being broke. You know?
Hmm.
So so and I'm also not afraid of like going to paint someone's garage or washing cars or you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not
Yep.
afraid of that type of work. So
Mm-hmm.
so if you have no problem doing that, you know what I mean? Like then you do it,
I
you
love that.
know? And
Yeah.
so developing that sort of seed money originally was like in school, I'm just not afraid to work, like, you know, and I'll do the like the gig for gas money, you know what I mean?
Huh.
And the like there's I don't believe in like no work is beneath me, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
because working is good.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll babysit, you know, I'll empty trash cans because it's
Mm-hmm.
not beneath me because work is good.
Yep.
So 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 originally it was that, you know what I mean? And then so I waited until it was absolutely necessary for me to
Hmm.
have a team. You know what I'm saying? Because I was
Hmm.
willing to do all the other stuff. So and and at first the first guy that was like sort of on the other side of my emails, like I called him a manager, but he wasn't. He was just my friend that we made an email address for, you
Sure.
know.
Sure.
And but even before that, I actually just created a separate email address for myself
Mm-hmm.
and acted like I was my own manager. So I
Nice.
spoke about myself in third person, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
And so you know, you fake it till you make it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I did that until it was like I honestly cannot handle this. You know
Huh.
what I mean? Because there was enough work coming in.
Yeah.
So then I was able to ask a friend who was able to do this part-time first, you know what I'm saying? Because he had his own job, you know what I mean, and wanted to help and thought it was fun and we did that until it was absolutely necessary
Hmm.
because he could not keep up with
Hmm.
the thing. So I was willing to move as slow as it was as was necessary, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
so that I knew that like my financial structure was strong enough to where it was like I have like quite literally maxed out what I could do at this level. Like there's no way to generate more income with the team I have. So so I waited until that point until and then we went to the next point, you know what I mean? And did the same thing until there was no way I could generate more income until I had a bigger team. You know what I mean? So I was willing to do the slow kind of like there's you know it is pretty tempting to kind of like skip those steps so you think that like well if I get to there but the
Mm-hmm.
demands you know for your work is not there, you don't need this you know ginormous team yet, so I was just willing to take the slowest route possible, you know,
Hmm.
until the demand till the demand was there for me to have that.
That's really inspiring. I think there is a huge tendency, especially because, folks hear a lot about, mindset and all this kind of stuff. And I think they get it confused maybe with growing too fast because
Yeah.
sometimes those seem like contradictory things. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's awesome. You want to make sure that you level up as a professional and in
Yeah.
your work and all that. But how do you balance that with, yeah, not taking on more
Yeah.
more
Yeah, like
payroll than you
when
can handle.
absolutely. When I got a publicist, it was because I wasn't looking for one. A gig asked for it,
Hmm.
and I had to Google what it was. Like, we got booked for. I want to say it was the first time I did like a legitimate South by Southwest like
Mm-hmm.
showcase. The first time I did a legit one,
Right.
and my manager at the time did the wheeling and dealing, and then the promoter said the rest of the stuff we'll just get from your publicist. Like, just can you just have them email us all we need? And we were like, yeah, sure, go, yeah. What's a publicist,
Yeah.
right? So then like had to that day, like find one and hire one,
Wow.
and then give them all the info, and they understood that like that it was kind of cool. They knew I was like kind of small potatoes for them, but they were like,
Wow.
that's kind of cool that so our story was like really got them on board, that it was like, man, yeah, I had no idea what a publicist was. I'm just in a position where now I need one. So here's a data dump, you know what I mean? Like, here's all that we've done so far, here's what they need, and can you talk to them to make sure this works out? Like, sure.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty.
That's wow, that's a really cool story. Huh.
Yeah, so that's so yeah, I just waited until I needed it.
So, just a few minutes left, but I guess I want to ask if it seems like you've just done an incredible job sort of bootstrapping your purpose or your
In some
success
way.
or just kind of
Yeah.
is that if I was sitting across the table from you right now instead of,
Hmm.
via Skype or whatever, and I
Yeah.
was saying to you, I have these big things I want to do and I don't really know where to start, and should I take it all on myself
Hmm.
or should I hire out right away? What would you say?
Man, I would say first, like, are you sort of like skill set wise, like, are you excellent at what you're
Hmm.
hoping to do? You know what I'm saying? That
Hmm.
would be my first thought. And and I mean, if I'm sitting across from like, Claire Diaz-Ortiz, I'm like, well, of course you're excellent. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. You know what I mean? But yeah, my first thought would be like, well, number one, like, and have the people immediately around you kind of like confirm that
Mm-hmm.
like this is a direction you should go in.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then I would say, you know, um, do you have a savings? Like, are you,
Mm-hmm.
is there like a stockpile of like cash that like just in case this don't work, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna drown. That would be step two. And then I think step three would be like, man, yeah, take your time and like, I mean, there's microwaves are great, you know what I'm saying? But there's nothing like
Mm.
a slow cooked meal. You know what I'm saying? So like just at the end of the day, dude, like, you know, this a a 48-hour slow smoked piece of brisket is gonna change your life. You know what
Wow.
I'm saying?
Yep.
So like just be okay with that like slow cook. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And like take your time and be as amazing as you can be with the amount of hours the day will allow you. You know, if it's like if you only got 4 hours of extra time because you're working a full-time job, you got 4 hours, then slaughter those 4 hours. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But at the end of that 4 hours, you need to stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and then if you worked as hard as you could and those 4 hours earned you another 2 hours, then slaughter those 6 hours. And then
Hmm.
until those 6 hours can earn you another 2 hours, I'm just saying, like, just be diligent with the time that you have. You know what I'm saying? And just wait for the demand. So that's what I would say. I'd be like, nah, don't hire out first. You know what I'm saying? Like, wait until you absolutely need it. You know what I'm saying? And recognize your weaknesses, and because right now, like, especially if you're just starting off, you may not even know like where your
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses is. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And like, if you're like a good example is like I know dudes that like set out to be musicians, and then it turns out they're incredible like engineers, sound engineers. And like
Right.
once they started getting behind the boards and started mixing their own album, they
Wow.
were
Right.
actually enjoy this way more, much more. You know what I'm saying? So like, don't hire out these like managers and engineers. And then you realize like, oh my God, I'd actually rather be an engineer. You know what I'm saying? Like, so just wait. You know what I mean? Like, you may discover that there's something else in this process that's like more life giving. My manager now was a poli sci major. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he majored in poli sci and then got like, and then went to like a master's in theology. And now he manages a rapper. You know what I'm saying? So like, you never know, you know?
I love it.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Hey, you can find me, you know what I'm saying, out here cooking. Nah, I am, website's humblebeast.com. That's where, like all my, you know, tour dates and information, my socials are all just prop hip hop. Yeah, prop hip hop. So that's all on all of them. That's what they are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Propaganda.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's so cool. Yeah.